Let me just say this before I get too deep into the video. Elden Ring is a great game, and this critique video is more about certain systems and little gripes I have with the game, rather than the boss fights, the story, or the gameplay, because that stuff is perfect in my opinion. Elden Ring is obviously great, and that statement can be backed up from it winning the Game of the Years in 2022, and its DLC being very popular when it launched, despite the game releasing 2 years later, which is crazy to think that Elden Ring is still relevant 2 years after the game launched. Now, that's enough talking about how great Elden Ring is, because everyone knows that. So instead, let's get into the first thing that I want to critique, which will be the open world design of the game. The open world of Elden Ring is great, and I enjoy all the stuff you can visit, like the mini dungeons, legacy dungeons, the random teleporter locations, the gales or gulls, and the open world of Elden Ring is just absolutely stunning. I have never seen a game with so much care and attention to the art direction. But with all that said, the one issue I have with Elden Ring's open world is how huge it is. I may sound crazy when I say this, but Elden Ring has way too much content in it. I remember my first playthrough of the game back in 2022, and it took me around 120 hours to beat, and I didn't even explore all the areas in the game. Again, I may sound crazy about this, but it takes forever to beat Elden Ring if you explore all the open world. And it made me miss how I could just finish Dark Souls 3 in 30 to 40 hours, and Dark Souls 1 in about 20 hours. There's just something nice in knowing that I won't have to sink 100 hours into a game to beat it. Because it can be daunting when I make a new character and realize that I'm gonna have to go through the whole open world again. Especially now that the DLC has added even more content for me to go through. And I know I could skip bosses and content if I wanted to, but I have a hard time not doing all the content. Because I am a completionist. I will try to do every dungeon, every boss, and to collect all the stuff I can. And I especially do it in open world games like Oblivion, Fallout 4, Two Worlds, and of course now Elden Ring. It's a habit, I will never break it, and I can only hope that the next open world game FromSoft has will trim down on the fat, because some of it doesn't need to be there in my opinion. And with that statement as a segue, another issue that arose with the huge size of the open world is all the repeat bosses that are in the game. Did Elden Ring really need a bunch of repeat bosses, like the Erdtree Avatar or Tree Sentinels? Did the later mini-dungeons really need to be filled with repeats too? And did most of the legacy dungeon bosses need to be reskinned for extra open-world content? To answer those questions, I will have to say no, of course not. They did not need to do that. Now, I'm not saying FromSoft shouldn't reuse assets, and I'm fine with seeing repeats, but I am arguing that they went way overboard this time and it bloated the game a little too much. Now again, I'm not necessarily against reusing assets, and I don't feel this problem is the biggest in the world, but I've seen a lot of complaints about this, and honestly I wanted to bring it up because it is a valid complaint. The next issues I have with Elden Ring are some of the systems that have been added to the game, like the Shadow Tree fragments in the DLC. I don't hate the fragments, I get why they have them, but I wish they just copied exactly what Sekiro did instead with its leveling, because I think it would be better for the gameplay balance, and just in general to keep the leveling system behind the core gameplay of Souls, which is the combat. The next system I don't like that Elden Ring uses is how you upgrade your weapons. And what I don't like is how sparse the ancient dragon smithing stones are. I get making them hard to come by while you're playing the game, but when you beat the game, they should give you a bell bearing so you can buy an unlimited amount of them. Because it makes PvP harder to get into the way it is now. Because you don't want to accidentally max out a trash PvP weapon, and the way people get around this is by duping. But come on, FromSoft, let's just cut out the middleman and let me experiment with all the weapons fully maxed. Sekiro also has a system for this that I like too, but if FromSoft just added a bell bearing after beating the game like I described, that'd be perfect. Now, the last critique that I want to talk about when it comes to game systems in Elden Ring actually is one that they don't currently have in the game, which is a boss fight mode. FromSoft added one in Sekiro a year after it came out, and I don't get why we didn't get one with Elden Ring. Elden Ring, like all FromSoft games I have played, are very much about the boss fights. So it always confused me that they never added a boss fight game mode until Sekiro released. Let's be real here. There are some bosses we would all love to fight occasionally, but making a new character and going through the whole game just to fight them again is a bit excessive. So I hope FromSoft adds a boss mode at least, so I can fight Consort Radahn anytime I want after I beat the fight, like I can with Sword Saint Ishin in Sekiro, or the bonfire aesthetic that they did in Dark Souls 2. That was a great system that should have remained in Dark Souls 3 and onwards. The last critiques I would like to bring up in this video today would be about accessibility. Now I know that this is a bit of a contentious topic with FromSoft fans because they tend to equate accessibility with easy mode, since game journalists and news outlets tend to do the same thing. But please rest assured that's not what I mean, because Elden Ring already has an easy mode. It's called the Mimic Tier and Bleed builds. Instead, what I mean would be like a dedicated pause button, because wouldn't it be nice to be able to pause the game like you can in any other game with one button, instead of having to go to the inventory, press the help button, and then selecting menu explanation to pause the game? Admittedly, I don't find the pause issue to be a big deal, which is why I put it in the end of the video, but I do think if it's already in the game, then you should be able to just make it easy to do like Sekiro did. I'd also like to see FromSoft add colorblind modes, the ability to make the in-game text bigger, and any other option that does not impact gameplay in any way, but instead can help people have a better experience playing a great game like Elden Ring. As long as it does not make the game easier, I am down for any accessibility option that people can think of. Thank you for watching the video. If you have your own thoughts and opinions, let me know in the comment section, and...
I'm sorry, sir. It's time for you to leave.